And welcome back into another edition of the Chris Mathis podcast, a Talk to Him Tuesday edition of the show, which of course is brought to you by my friends at Information on Demand. Information on Demand, whether you need criminal background checks, drug screenings, e-verify, academic accreditations, or other screening services, they've got you covered. It doesn't matter if you're here in the state of Florida, across the country in California, Montana, Colorado, anywhere in the United States, they can take care of you guys. My friends at Information on Demand will get you that information you need in just 8 hours or less. Information on Demand. They're fast, they're accurate, affordable pre-employment background screening services. Give them a call today, 855-914-4636, 855-914-4636, or visit them online today at informationondemand.net. Again, glad that you guys have tuned in for another edition of Talk to Him Tuesday with, of course, my co-host, Spencer Mathis, who is back here with me as we have our friend, a freelancer and production and multimedia in all regard, Josh Harris, joining us right now to talk about his career, a guy that I met this NFL football season at Raymond James Stadium. I think the second or third game of the year, I ran across you and I was like, hey, man, this guy's really cool, because just a few weeks before the season started, I believe, you came into the studio here at iHeartRadio Tampa Bay, and you guys pulled some audio from the Ronnie and T-Crash show. So I think that's been a cool relationship that we've been able to build over the last couple of months.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to finding your seat each and every game, no matter where my seat was at, Josh. So thanks for your time, man, and thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no doubt. So I know that you've done some work with NFL Films, but technically you're a freelancer. You're not necessarily employed by NFL Films. You're contracted out by NFL Films when they need a gig. So for somebody out there that has no clue what a freelancer is, what is a freelancer for someone that's actually in the business, that actually is truly a freelancer?
Well, I'll tell you the good stuff. You're your own boss. You work when you want to work. You can work as much as you want to work, as long as they'll have you. You can say no to jobs. I'm sorry, I'm booked that day. I'm not available. You have time for your family. The downside is there's not a cushy, corporate, comfortable job you go to. They don't, I have to buy my own health insurance. But most people in the production world start with a job. They work for an employer, and more times than not, when they go freelance and become their own boss and kind of experience the flexibility of it, they don't ever go back. So it's a great way to make a living. I feel very fortunate to play a small part in the production world, and it's awesome.
Before we really delve into this and your career, obviously, you weren't always in the production world. You started off in business and sales and then made that transition to the production world. Talk about what exactly you were doing in business and sales, and then how all of a sudden you're like, hey, let me get into production and go from there. Now, obviously, you've done some incredible work that we'll talk about here throughout the show.
Well, I like to say I had my midlife crisis early before I was married with kids, and I was young. I was doing well financially. It was kind of a family business, office equipment kind of stuff, and I wasn't happy. There was always this technical, creative side of me, and it never occurred to me that I could make a living that way, that could be a source of income. And it took me walking away from my formal business education and stuff. And I was just kind of kicking around like, what do I do? And a buddy of mine from high school was like, dude, you need to talk to a friend of mine. He's in the production business. He does, like, at the time he was doing like weddings and dance recitals and a little corporate work. And that kind of like was that was my introduction to the production world.
And you start about that introduction. I believe your first gig was booming a mic for $5 an hour for a corporate job. So obviously there's a lot to that one sentence right there. What exactly does booming a mic mean for those that have no clue about this technical side of production?
Well, first of all, he called Steve, his name's Steve. He calls me and he's like, "Hey man, listen, I was hanging out with this guy for like a year for free, just showing up because like I loved this business. I didn't want a business. I love production. He would call me. I had no formal education. He'd call me. He's like, "Hey man, I got a gig. Show up." I would, and that went on for about a year. And then one day he called me. He's like, "Hey, I got a gig. Blah blah blah. But this one's different." I'm like, "How so?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to pay you for this one." And like it was like boom, like a light bulb went off, and it was just like, wait a minute. It's such a cliche, but let's continue with the football references. You'd see guys on the sideline, they'd be like, "I can't believe I get paid to do this," and like I didn't get it, but at that moment I got it. It was like I can get paid to do what I'm like playing, I'm having fun. I loved it so much, and so he calls me and I boom a mic. So booming a mic is you've probably seen it on TV, and it's a big long pole with a big, they call it the dead cat on the end of it. There it is. And when you boom a mic, you're basically holding a microphone over the subject's head so you can hear them. And I was basically working the crowd in this corporate Q&A session where I was putting the microphone over the person that was talking in lieu of passing a mic around and taking the time to do all that. So I was booming a mic, and that was my first gig. I know I've run camera, I've edited, I've done studio work, I've done truck work, I've done a bunch of stuff in the production world, but I always like I ended up truly like specializing in audio, and it was kind of a neat thing that was my first paid gig that I ever did.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously, I spoke about a few moments ago, you came to iHeartRadio Tampa Bay with some guys from NFL Films, obviously, I believe probably freelancers as well, to come grab some audio from the Ronnie and T-Craft show earlier this season. I believe it was right before that Thursday night game against the Baltimore Ravens. I was asking you how heavy that, that mic, what do they call that stick again? I apologize.
The boom pole.
The boom pole. Yeah, I was asking you how heavy that was, and you let me hold it, and it's not necessarily heavy for a few seconds, but I feel like after being in there for an hour or so, it probably does weigh down a little bit. Is that right?
Over time, you find creative ways to, like, if say you're working a game and you're down on the field and you're trying to get audio from the band. Like the last time I did that was for the Gasparilla Bowl, where Wake Forest was in town, and their quarterback is part of a Peyton Manning show, which is going to air around draft time on ESPN. NFL Films is shooting it, and it was a lot. It was actually more booming than a regular football game, I think, NFL. But you find creative ways to hold that pole, but at the end of the day, your shoulders are sore, your forearms are sore, your arms might be shaking a little as you're trying to just a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. All right, Josh. So I want to talk more about your career in regards to some cool opportunities that you've had before we get into even stuff away from the football field, because now obviously I spoke about you were up in the press box for each and every game at Raymond James Stadium this season, but you've been to 4 Super Bowls in your time, and I've got the 4 written down. I believe 2001 was your first, Ravens and Giants. Also 2009, Steelers and Cardinals in Tampa, followed up with the Buccaneers and Chiefs game in Tampa, 2021 Super Bowl as well. And then last year, you were in LA for that Rams-Bengals Super Bowl too. Talk about that whole atmosphere from the get-go of having your first shot back in 2001 with that Super Bowl between the Ravens and the Giants.
Well, with that game, I spent the week working with the Fox network in various capacities, doing little like remote live shots and stuff around the Super Bowl, kind of around the stadium. They would go out and shoot little packages that they would talk about, leading up to the Super Bowl, and we'd go shoot things, and I'd do the audio, and they'd edit it together, and it would air, on the Fox network. And then come game time, I was with a camera guy, and we basically were working the sideline, just shooting moments from the game. It was kind of pretty cool to just, it started with the flyover of the B-2 bomber. That was just literally like, puts a lump in your throat, just like that thing flies over. And that's like the first, like, I'm like, this is insane. I can't believe I'm here, And we spent the game just kind of working the sidelines, not necessarily players per se, but just capturing moments within the game. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. This is a Super Bowl, and here I am. And it was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and your first two Super Bowls, the one against the Ravens Giants was of course one of the greatest defenses of all time with the 2000 Ravens defense. They had Trent Dilfer as their starting quarterback, which has Tampa ties that aren't good. And then the next time you were the Cards Steelers Super Bowl with one of the most historic plays in Super Bowl history as well. Before halftime, that James Harrison pick six. So
having that 100 yards, 98 yards, something crazy.
Having
like
that as your first two are just absolutely insane. So I saw a couple of days ago that they're going to do a documentary about the 2000s Ravens team. Are you playing any part in that? I couldn't tell. I don't remember if it was NFL Films or not. But speaking to that, if you are not playing a part of that, do other like companies come to NFL Films to try and get the mic'd up audio from that year, like the 2000 Ravens?
They do. Like whenever you see, now I'm not exactly sure how all that works, but I know that, for instance, all of the, like when ESPN wants to do a documentary about a player or a moment in time within the NFL, they'll go to Films, and Films has this amazing database, and you can type in like a player's name and some crazy wild card word like laughing, and the way they document and chronicle and ingest all of this footage is categorized by all these crazy metadata that when you put in a wild search, like I need somebody sneezing, and you'll get a list of all the players like doing stupid sneezing stuff. It's crazy, like what you can go to them and they can provide you. So yeah, they have this amazing database, and they're constantly providing outside productions with content, that I don't know how much it costs or all that stuff works. So that's not my department, but I do know that they are the heart and soul of, the NFL and have all that footage.
And do you know how many years back the NFL Films audio goes? Like, because of course you work with the Football Life is what you said, and the Top 100. Like, how many years back have they been miking players up or just getting audio from the locker room or around the team?
It goes back to, I want to say, the first Super Bowl. Like they've been putting mics, they've been experimenting with it as far back as that. I think they had the coach wired up for the Packers in that first Super Bowl, and there are moments captured with that audio as far back as that. And Steve Sable, who passed away a few years ago, his dad started NFL Films, and then Steve kind of really took it over. I just saw that one of the last productions that Steve Sable spearheaded, which was one of the first things I worked on, was this documentary called Finding Giants about the Giants football team, and how the guys that look for players, and all around the country, they have these categories and geography areas where they're searching for the next superstar, and it was a fascinating process. And that was like Steve Sable's last project he worked on, but he started it, and they've been, as long as NFL Films has been around, they're capturing it. They have it all chronicled. They used to shoot on film. They're in the process, I think, of transferring it all digitally. They have crazy stuff down and they call it the vault, where like they have Henry Ford's first films that he shot of like the Model T back at the turn of the century. Like somehow they're like the place where all this crazy stuff gets stored. I've never been in the vault, but I've been to films, and one day I hope to actually get in the vault. You see images of it in some of the shows that they do.
Again, joined by Josh Harris, a freelancer who's done work for NFL Films. Also, some really cool things, too, especially if you guys are into Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. We'll talk about Kate Upton as well here in just a few moments. But talk about your role in the Super Bowl and if it's changed throughout those 4 different Super Bowls that you attended in 01, 2009, 2021, and 2022. And is this a field of work in which, in 01 and 09, you kind of progressed or had more responsibility? Or is this, hey, this is your forte, we want you to continue to do this because you are, one of the best to do this?
Well, in 01 and 09, I kind of was sort of like the picture you showed. I got an audio bag, strapped to me, and I'm running around with a boom pole. That was sort of me for the first 01 and 09 with Fox and NBC. And then the one in Tampa a few years ago, I had the opportunity to do what you see me do in front of you, which was provide what is referred to as enhanced audio. And the enhanced audio, which interestingly enough was conceived by John Madden. It was his brainchild to one day be able to kind of hear the line, the offensive line, to hear what's going on the field. It was a great concept. The teams were hesitant because they were afraid. We don't want the mics. We don't want people hearing stuff that's going on in the game, And so NFL Films was involved, and NFL Films came up with this concept and how to do it, and they refine it every year. They get better and better technically and everything else. And so for the Super Bowl in Tampa, I was doing this enhanced job where I go in and I mic the pads of the guards for both the home team and the visiting team, Bucks and Chiefs in that instance. And I control when the audio from the field goes to the broadcast truck. So when you're watching a game on TV and you hear the quarterback go, "Blue 32, it's not because of a guy with a parabolic mic on the sideline. It's because the guard has a mic on his back, that is picking up the quarterback. And after they clap, break the huddle, the mic gets open. The truck can choose at any point when to take that feed. After the ball is hiked, about 3 seconds afterwards, I fade it out. And within that window, the truck can decide when they want to hear it. And usually it's right after, they take it right afterwards, and then you hear the quarterback. And then as soon as the ball is snapped, you can hear that of like a train wreck from the offense and defense. And they usually transition at that point to the sideline mics. And that's enhanced audio. And that's what I did for the Super Bowl in Tampa. And then what I did in LA was something totally different. I was on the sideline. I had Michelle Tafoya. So there's a show that streamed on Paramount, I believe, and it was called Women in the NFL. It was like a 6 or 7 series show. And it talked about women and their involvement in the NFL, from Condoleezza Rice and her love of football, and the owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones's daughter, is basically the day-to-day runner of the team. She kind of is the glue that holds it all together. And so she's a high-level exec in the NFL. And so the security lady, a bunch of different people. I never saw the show, but I had Michelle Tafoya, sideline reporter. That was her last game. She was mic'd up. And then I had a camera operator from NFL Films who's on staff there. Her name is Hannah. She's just this amazing pistol of a camera girl, and working in a guy's world, as it were, and doing a great job. And she had a mic on her too. So they were our 2 subjects. And so instead of the football game per se, we were kind of focused on these 2 people, and we're running around the sideline, following them, doing their job. And it was kind of cool. But just different. We weren't there to cover the football game. We were there to cover some people doing a job at the game. And that was kind of a neat perspective to kind of have at the game. So, it's neat that my job is always kind of the same, but also very different at the same time. And I love that, the variety of that.
And you mentioned that John Madden was the one that wanted to have offensive linemen or defensive linemen mic'd up. I have a question: if coaches or GMs ever go back and try and listen to what their players on the field are saying, maybe for disciplinary reasons or just for team morale, to see who's with it and who's not?
Well, the only time that what they say is recorded for enhanced is when they're open and it's part of the broadcast. the rest of the time, there's nothing to go back and listen to. It's only recorded in the broadcast. So that there's no record of it. There's no way that you don't go back and listen to anything. If you want to hear what they said, you watch the broadcast. And that's the only time that what they say gets put out there during the enhanced process.
So I obviously saw you at each and every game this year at Raymond James Stadium, and you talked about the fact that you guys get there pretty early to make sure that all the equipment is set up. I believe for was it the Dallas? No, it was the Carolina Panthers game, I believe, week 16 or 17. That's correct. Yeah, week 16 or 17 in Tampa, where there was fog still. It was a 1 o'clock kickoff. Fog was still really, really bad. And you were talking about, man, I'm not sure if this fog is going to get all the way out. And I said, yeah, I can only imagine it was bad this morning. And you said, yeah, it was bad about 8 o'clock. And I'm like, man, he gets here at 8 a.m. before 1 o'clock kickoff to do his job. So how much prep work goes into that? And what exactly are you doing when you guys do get there so early? Because obviously you have a very important job and you're trying to make sure that the guards are mic'd up. But what exactly are you guys doing in terms of prep before every football game?
Well, for the enhanced process, I actually go in the day before the game, most of the time a Saturday, and I build my equipment in the press box. That now, before some of the venues, some of the stadiums, they get to leave their kit built in their area, whether it's whatever the area it is. And I unfortunately have to go in the day before. I build it. I put up my antennas. I set everything up. I check the mics, make sure nothing got damaged the game before, and do a little, testing. And then that takes me a couple hours. And then I'm usually in about 5 or 6 hours before kickoff. So if it's a 1 o'clock game, I'm there early. And that's why when we went in there for that game, I mean, I walked out of my house. I couldn't see the house across the street from me. And then I get to the stadium, and I had some I have some pictures of it, but like you couldn't see the stadium. The stands were just a cloud. It was a fog that eventually burned off, and it turned out to be a halfway decent day. But yeah, it was crazy early that morning. So yeah, I get there a little early to make sure everything's right. So the day of the game, I get there, and we have to be in to the equipment room, and we have to get everything done, and we leave before the players show up. Just that, so there's no disruptions. There's no breaking of their routine. And a lot of times the players, they don't even not that they don't know, but it's just their pads are wired, and then the jerseys go over the pads, and the players, you don't even see it. It's almost like they're FBI undercover wired agents. So
I want to talk about the, I guess you could say, range that the mics get picked up on, because there's an antenna right in front of you. I talked about it was a Shure antenna, I believe, right in front of you in the press box at Raymond James. And I was kind of asking you a little bit about that, and I don't know if you had a specific answer or whatnot, but I mean, how far can these players get from the antenna, or how far can they be and you feel confident that you're going to pick up the audio?
Well, one of the key things that makes this successful are there is a team of guys at every game, at every stadium, in every city, and their job is to coordinate all of the wireless devices that are happening at the game, whether it's ESPN or Fox or NFL Network. All these guys show up with mics. The referees are talking on wireless mics. Cameras are using wireless frequencies and wireless technology, and it all has to not interfere with anything else. There are TV stations around there. There's a TV station across the street from the stadium in Tampa. All this RF is flying around, and their job is to say, here's a clean space. This is going to be for you and what you need to do, and all your mics will live in here. And because of that, we are working in like optimum environment. And so, I'm up in the press box, kind of at that slash angle, looking long ways down the field. I mount the antennas up above me in the windows, and it'll pick the player up on the far end of the field. And that's probably, you wouldn't want to push it much more than that, but it's enough, and so you hear them all the way from one end to the other.
Yeah, it's quite impressive. Again, joined by Josh Harris, a freelancer who's done some incredible work, obviously with NFL Films, done some stuff with a very well-known zookeeper as well, but continuing with some football talk here. Talk about kind of your viewpoint in regards to the stress levels that come with doing a football game. Is there any stress with your job, or are you that confident in what you do to where you're just, hey, it's another day. I got here early enough. I'm prepped, how would you say, or is there ever a sticky situation where you do have to, okay, how do I handle this? Something went wrong. And if so, what are some of those situations that you try to improve on?
I wish you had been sitting behind me at the Cowboys game.
Sorry to interrupt you, Josh. Yeah, they moved. I was way up high to the left, man. I was upset I wasn't directly behind you.
You go in, you wire the pads, and the microphones are in a standby mode. And when the players come out for pregame warmups, you fire the mics up, and you really once they're fired up and everything, and you listen and you hear them and it sounds good, like you're over the hump. But it's that 4 hours from you mic the pads to when they finally come out that you're like, come on, please turn on, and 99.9% of the time you don't have a problem with that. But there was the last game of the season was a tricky one. Apparently the frequency coordinator didn't catch that a TV station had turned on in the market and was causing a lot of interference. And it kind of took almost the first half to really figure it out. And it wasn't the solid reception that myself and the network were expecting. And so he scrambled to give me some new frequencies, and I'm having to reprogram the transmitters remotely with this remote and make sure that we're still sending the enhanced signal to the broadcast truck. And it was fun. It was an exciting way to finish the season at home.
Yeah, I'm sure. Speaking of home, you reside in the Tampa Bay area. So I know that you're a freelancer and you've done jobs for not just NFL Films, but also some stuff with Sports Illustrated. Also did a little bit of work as well with Jack Hanna, a world famous zookeeper. I'm not much into zoos. I like them, but even I have heard of, Jack Hanna. So talk about your traveling and whatnot for jobs. If it's just only during the football season, or if you're doing other freelance work to where you're traveling across the country as well.
During the football season, you stay pretty busy with films, but during the off season, like NFL Films shoots 12 months out of the year, because all of the shows that are on the NFL Network, all of the Peyton's Places shows, all of the Epix Icons shows it's basically Epix has a show called Icons. It's kind of like a football life on the NFL Network. And you sit down with a player or somebody or a coach or someone, and like they tell you all about their career and pre and post and all just amazing stuff, insights into these people. So they're constantly needing content, constantly shooting and constantly doing stuff. So I work a little bit with them, they're a good client. But then, I've traveled the world with a corporate client. I've been to, I've been paid to go to Poland and work, and China and Mexico and Alaska. Had the opportunity to work with some great people at Jack Hanna doing a commercial. I'm putting a mic on them. And I wish I could find a link for the spot. It's for the Columbus Zoo, and there's a giant velociraptor in like the passenger seat of a Jeep, and there it is, and it slobbers and Jack's driving the Jeep, and it's like a dog sticking his head out the window, and a big piece of slobber goes and lands on the car behind him, and the guy has to turn his wipers on. It was a real fun commercial, and so it's a great way to make a living. I've been around the world. It's kind of cool, and been up in airplanes, and I love aviation. So the Sports Illustrated job you referred to was an interesting, funny story that If you want to hear it, I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead and tell us.
So, she's we're going up in the 0G plane, and the night before we all go out to dinner, and we're sitting there, and I'm talking to this guy across from me. Actually, I'm mentioned in the Sports Illustrated article. The guy, unbeknownst to me, across from me is the guy writing the article for Sports Illustrated, and I've been up in planes a lot, and a pilot told me once, he's like, yeah, the best thing to eat before you go up in an aerobatic plane is a banana, because it's the only thing that tastes as good coming up as it did going down. So I made a reference to that. I had no idea who the guy was. And we're eating dinner. And I'm long story short, I broke a tooth. And I drank some cold water. I thought it was like a crouton in my salad, and I put some cold water in my mouth, and the cold water hit the nerve in my tooth, and like my head exploded, and it, like, the pain never went away. And the next morning we get up, we go up in the plane, in the 0G plane, and it's doing these parabolic, things to give you weightlessness. And I'm not the guy that gets sick on roller coasters, and I can sit on a motorcycle backwards, and I can read in the car. I mean, like, I don't get sick. I'm not that guy. But for that day, I was blarking my brains out, and there were about 1 million GoPros mounted in this plane, and I just recently saw the guy I worked with, and to this day he laughs. He's like, yeah, every once in a while, one of the GoPros, there you are in the background, just and while it was a super cool experience, I had that hanging over me, but I got paid to go up in 0G, and it was awesome. You forget about the bad stuff and you just remember the good stuff. But that was a fun one for sure.
All right, real quick, what was your role in that? Because it was Kate Upton, the swimsuit model, was there in the plane and outside the plane. What was your role in that production, in that photo shoot, that bikini shoot?
So the guy I was working with, he has the unfortunate job of having to travel around with all the photo shoots and shoot all the behind the scenes videos. It's a terrible job. He hates it, I know. But it was basically, he brought me in to help with, so we had the photographer mic'd, and we had the girl who was the director mic'd, and then I had a boom mic that I was trying to capture just the environment that was going on, and all of that was coming back to me, and I was recording it in my spot. I had like a ratchet strap, my legs kind of tucked underneath it, so every time the plane did the thing, I'm not floating around, and so that was sort of my role, is to capture the audio of the photographer, the director, and then everyone else.
Yeah, talk about what takes. Oh, Spence, you got it.
Okay, actually, no, stay on topic here, because I was going to go to NFL Films again, but you can.
Yeah, all right, so let's stay on topic here. Were you able to interact at all with Kate Upton or any other bikini models of that nature? Because again, just talking about zookeepers, like I don't know many zookeepers, but I know Jack Hanna. I don't know many swimsuit models, but I know of Kate Upton.
So yeah, I mean, it was kind of, we all went out to dinner the night before, the crew and all of us. It was like 12 of us, I think. And we're at a restaurant, and she's there, and she got a big old bouquet of roses from her boyfriend at the time, who later became her husband, who I think you know who that is, right? He's a pitcher, pretty good.
Oh, wait, is it?
Last name starts with a V. So,
Verlander.
Yeah. So we're all like putting the rose petals on our noses, and we look, it was fun. It was crazy. And she was super nice, and just a regular person. I mean, like most of them are, and if you're invited into their little inner circle for a brief moment, they're usually pretty nice people. And she was nothing but super sweet and super nice, and was quite a trooper, man. She's having to do wardrobe changes on the plane in the middle of the weightless parts, and then it's like they put up these blinds so she could do it, because she's changing bathing suits and trying to have a little bit of privacy and changing her suit, and then and next thing we're weightless, and she's floating around. It was kind of surreal for sure.
Okay, and going back to your work with NFL Films, what is your role exactly whenever you're dealing with Top 100 or the Football Alliance or stuff of that matter?
So I'm basically I'll go in, I'll wire it's usually one person at a time, and I'll go in, I'll put a wireless mic, hide the mic on our subject, whoever it might be, and then I'll also use a stand, and I don't have to hold it, but I'll put the boom mic on a stand above them, so I have two sources of audio, the boom and the lav, and I record that discreetly back at me. And it's it's usually sometimes it's at the person's house, sometimes it's at a hotel or a ballroom or something, and I'm responsible for capturing whatever they're saying, and that's essentially my small little part in the big scheme of it all.
So taking the Top 100, for example, you're the guy that's kind of micing up like the player interviews whenever they're talking about a certain player. You're the guy that's micing up the guy that's saying like, hey, this Travis Kelce guy's one of the best tight ends in the league, or of that nature, stuff like that.
So like a lot of times they'll do that during training camp, and they'll do it at one of the team's facilities, and they'll set up in a room, and they'll just try to get as many players through there as they can to come in and talk about it. Because, every player, whether he was with the previous team or whatever, like speaks a little bit, hey, who would you vote for as best wide receiver, and so they capture these moments. And actually at the same time, there's a crew of people running around actually getting the players to fill out their ballots and say, who do you rank number one QB, number one wide receiver, and all that stuff's going on kind of outside our room while we're interviewing all these guys. I've done Top 100s in hotel rooms. I've done them at training camps. And it's usually they try to get a handful of players to come through and kind of make the time worthwhile to sit down and say, okay, talk to us about this. Or they have one small little hole they need to fill in a show that one player can speak to. So they'll go to that player and say, we want to make it easy for you. We'll come to you. We need to ask you a few questions. And it might be as, small as that, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and obviously, Josh, when you go to get that audio from these NFL players for the Top 100, is this a thing where the players happen to be in Tampa area, or are they like, hey, Josh, you got to go fly out to Arizona next Tuesday and go talk with Larry Fitzgerald?
Yeah, most of the time it's in Florida. I've done Top 100s in Atlanta. I've done Top 100s in New Orleans. But it's usually in Florida, Orlando, Jacksonville, Miami, Tampa. That particular show, I want to say, has been mostly in Florida. Like I said, I did one in Atlanta. I did one in New Orleans. Yeah, so it's generally for me, because they have. Listen, there are guys that have been working with NFL Films a lot longer than me that have a lot more seniority and have a lot more tenure, a lot more experience. But there are guys that do work with NFL Films, freelancers, like they have staff guys, but then they also have freelancers in almost every city that has a team. And geographically, they try to tap into those guys and use them if possible to, who wants to pay for travel, but when you need somebody and there's nobody available in that city, you bring someone in, and fortunately I'll be lucky from time to time to be that person.
Now, you obviously got to help out with Joe Namath and an update of Joe and the Magic Bean, right? What was your role in that regard to, I saw the video, I saw the original one from years ago, and then I saw the updated version that you helped out with, and it was like a sit down with Joe Namath, and he was talking about Bengals superstar quarterback Joe Burrow.
That was done over in Jupiter, where he lives, and it was at his recording studio where we had great acoustics, and essentially there was a script, and we recorded him reading that script, and then a few times he was on camera, purposely on camera, but I had no idea about the original video. It was kind of new to me, and I since or afterwards, I looked it up and it was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Winnie the Pooh narrating, or they brought in the guy that does the voice of Winnie the Pooh to
I noticed
narrate this
that.
thing, right? And then so here Joe Namath is now updating it about a new Joe and the Magic Bean, and so they just needed a place close to him that had good acoustics. So we go into this little recording studio and we record his audio, and the few times there's a camera there, and a few times he's on camera, and kind of had a nice little bit and a nice little part in that video.
Obviously, you've got to work with so many greats. We talk about, obviously, Jack Hanna, world famous zookeeper, Joe Namath, other NFL players, Kate Upton as well. Is there one or two that will always stand out to you that you'll take to the grave with you and think, hey, I can't believe that I was able to do this, or this person was so great? Is there one or two names that come to mind?
I mean, I don't try to name drop it, just so, I mean, you have the opportunity to work with some, amazing people. More times than not, I kind of find myself appreciating the other crew people I'm working with. It's kind of neat to work with a celebrity, but it's like, some are jerks, some are nice. You're like, whatever, you kind of get over that whole,
Yeah.
But they it's Shaquille O'Neal and Tiger Woods and just Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer, and just some amazing sports people that you're doing interviews with these people, and they're inviting you into their homes, and you're kind of they're offering you, hey, can I get you a glass of water? And you're like, just like Jack Nicklaus just offered me a glass of water. Like, this is crazy, and so you kind of there's this, like, my wife is like, did you get any autographs? She was always like, do you get autographs? I was like, well, it's kind of this unspoken rule that you don't ask for autographs, but on occasion you'll get a picture, or I did a thing with Reggie Jackson, with the Yankees years ago, and the director brought in like a box of baseballs that he bought that he thought might be props. And after the interview, Reggie's like, hey, you want some autographs? And we're like, so I have a autograph, baseball from Reggie Jackson, and just amazing stuff. And last year, that Women in the NFL show I was telling you about, former President Bush was interviewed for that, because he talked about Condoleezza Rice and her involvement, and Jerry Jones's daughter, who he's close with, and talked about their involvement. So we did an interview with President Bush, and afterwards, it's kind of like in the middle of COVID, we're all wearing masks, and he's like, hey, how about a picture, and we all jump up, and he's like, get rid of those masks. We don't need masks. We can't see you smile. So I have a picture with Bush, and the crew. I mean, it's just, that has to be one of the top things for me, to be in a room with the former president, most powerful guy in the world, who throw politics out the window, just the president, super nice guy. He was great, and just would talk to you. And yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the top things for me.
As far as those that are watching right now that have any interest in production, what would you tell them in regards to getting their first start? Because now you're in a spot where you are your own boss. You're a freelancer. You talk about taking gigs or declining gigs that you don't want, or, maybe maneuvering and working on other projects and you're unable to do other gigs. But you started off making $5 an hour with your first gig, obviously setting up a mic, booming a mic. What would be your advice to somebody out there regarding if they have any interest or want to try out this field of work? And is it something that requires schooling?
Well, I think my advice would be, whatever you do for a living, I hope that you love what you do, because it's such a cliche, but it's very true. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I would want you to be in the production business because you love it. There are a lot of people. Full Sail is a great institution. A lot of great people learn some amazing things and come out of Full Sail. But a lot of times, a lot of people come out of there and they want to be the next Spielberg, and they're not willing to start at the bottom and be a PA and a production assistant on set and kind of work their way up and learn, the the rudest directors I've worked with, come to find out, like, never spent time working their way up. So they're just boom, I'm a director, and they don't understand or can't sympathize with what the other departments are dealing with or the situations you're put in. But I would want you to be in the production business because you love it, and don't be afraid to start at the bottom. Because if, like, you will learn so much. You know, I've been an editor, I've done camera work, I've done truck work. I'm a better audio guy because I edited, and I saw what the guys in the field were bringing back to me, and I saw what worked, I saw what didn't work. I'm not saying you have to be an editor, but just, the experience that I've had over my time has made me better at what I've decided to do in that small. There are so many things to do in the production world. You can be camera, you can be an assistant camera, you can be a director, you can be lighting, you can be assistant to lighting, you can be audio. There's just so many, makeup and wardrobe and all these different departments. And whatever it is you choose to do, just don't be afraid to start at the bottom, and be humble and be nice, because it's the nice people will get hired over, like, somebody with mediocre talent will get hired over a stellar technician if they have a better personality. If you're not easy to work with and you can't, production's a tough way. Like, you got to have thick skin, if you don't have thick skin and you can't take a joke or you can't take a little ribbing, this is not for you.
And I have one more final question for you, Josh. You mentioned your top 5 moments, and you had stuff that was ordinary, like going to the Super Bowl, just enjoying life, traveling, and stuff like that. And then you inserted in there about the 4th or 5th one in the email that you sent to Chris and I, that you had been in a room where a murder had taken place just a week prior. Could you speak more into that, or were you a part of that?
No, well, so as an audio guy, you can't always pick your jobs. It's just basically you get a call, hey man, you available next week? Yeah. Oh, and you don't always know what you're getting involved in. And this was some show where a kid who was making some bad decisions went to court, and the judge sentenced him to crime scene cleanup. So what does that mean? Well, this house, I don't even remember what city we're in, somewhere here in Florida, some guy in this little rundown home, somebody went in and shot him on a mattress in a room and blew his head off. And it was the body was gone, but all the blood and the parts and the pieces were on the wall. Blood had started to soak up the drywall. And let me mention that the house has been without power and closed up for 2 days. So we go in, we show up, and what the idea, the big reveal is, cameras in the room where this all took place, the door is shut, and we get his reaction to opening the door and seeing what he has to clean up. So Cameron and I are in the room, and we're like, hey, shut that door, count to 5, and let's do this, right? We don't want to be here any longer than we have to be in here. And the door shuts, and like a minute goes by, and we were like, where are they? Why are they coming in? The stench is horrible, and we're just dying. We're like, hey, open the, so they had, no, we're good. We're sorry, it took us a little longer. We're like, listen, we're in this room. You need to, like, make sure this happens quickly, because we don't want to be here any longer than we have to be here. So we're in there, they open the door, and the guy sees it, and he was freaked out, and he's like, oh my gosh, no way. And he's, we shoot him picking brains off the wall, and it's not always supermodels and superstars. Sometimes you're showing somebody picking brains off a wall. So welcome to the world of production.
Yeah, Josh, that's crazy. I want to wrap up with one final question for you. And you don't have to give us anything that you're unable to talk about, but are there current projects that you're getting ready to start on or that you're currently working on right now, first week of February and moving on?
Nothing exciting, unfortunately. Nothing, got a commercial. Most of the commercials I do, I'm not allowed to talk about because it's all like, who can get the product to market first. A lot of infomercials in Tampa. I've done, one of the people I work with a lot is Anthony Sullivan, the OxyClean guy, and Billy Mays before him, who passed away. they're both, Sully is based here in the Tampa area. So, do a lot of infomercials. That's kind of his niche, so that I've got a corporate gig. I'm coming up, and nothing exciting. It doesn't look like I'm going to the Super Bowl this year, which is cool, which is fine. I'll watch it from home and have some wings and have fun with that. But yeah, nothing. Unfortunately, anything exciting.
Okay, I know how this is though, because I feel like if I were on set just to watch, I'd be like, man, this is intriguing. This is awesome. Is there any way that any of the listeners can keep up with you or any of the work that you do? Do you have any social media of any kind that, people can check you out on?
I'm on Facebook and I post some stuff. I have an Instagram account, which should probably have a little more activity on it. I don't even remember what my Instagram name is, which I might be able to give to you after the fact. But
yeah, that sounds great. I'll make sure to tag that Instagram down below in the comments and the description, guys, if you want to keep up with Josh and all this work, because I know we just scraped the surface here. I feel like we might have to touch back up in a few months and talk again, Josh. So thanks for your time, my man. And we really appreciate it. And again, it was a pleasure to get to meet you this season at Raymond James.
Chris, Spencer, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you.